Hello, everybody, and welcome to Front Porch Chat Live. We're excited. Are we excited?
Absolutely.
Listen, I've got some great guests with us today. You know, we're kind of gravitating just a little bit away from just being, about Republican issues. We want to be able to address all issues. So tonight, I've invited a few friends to the porch for us to have a conversation. To my right, Roger Scott, who is an attorney and a liberal. He's proud of the fact that he's a liberal. Not a big fan of our president, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. And then on my left, I've got Derek Ryan. And Derek is the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Orange County. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
So, the way I thought we would do this today, guys, is kind of focus on national politics for just a little bit and then, get into some of the local issues that we would like to talk about. But let's just start with you, Roger. I know you're not a fan of President Trump. Today we realized that the healthcare situation didn't go anywhere. No vote was taken. What are your thoughts in general about this the Affordable Care situation, the president's approach to it, or at least a Congress and Senate, et cetera? What are your thoughts? Where are you at with that?
Well, overall, what's happened now is exactly the way the system was set up to do. The system's really set up so that neither party can act alone. Mm-hmm. You need to have a consensus. If you remember back when Obama was first president, he had a Democratic Congress.
Right.
And got very little done. So even though you control...
So do you support, you think that's a good idea that we can't get much done when one party's in control, the other, nothing really gets accomplished?
Well, yeah, because the system's set up so that you have to have both sides come together to really get anything done. And it doesn't matter if you think you have a majority on your own. You really don't. The system really, if you go back to read the Federalist Papers, is designed to kind of do nothing as much as possible.
Tell everybody what the Federalist Papers are.
Okay, the Federalist Papers, when they came up with the Constitution... When the government was first formed in 1776, we had what were called the Articles of Confederation.
Right.
We ran the country. We didn't have the Constitution. And that lasted for about 10 years or so, and it didn't work. Okay. The country was falling apart. So they came up with the Constitution. Now they had to, so to say, sell this to the population and get them to vote it in, which, as you see, getting any major thing
I don't see anybody gets anything accomplished in one.
Right, and here you're changing the entire government, the entire way of doing anything, so it was huge. So
kind of like what President Trump is doing.
Oh, even much bigger, much bigger.
Just much bigger than anyone. I just want to get that in there.
Bigger than what Lincoln did and bigger than what Trump wants to do, bigger than anybody.
Go ahead.
So the Federalist Papers were papers written by Madison and others to kind of sell this to the public. There were also the Anti-Federalist Papers, and you can find them in some bookstores, but they lost the argument, so it's a bit hard.
Get to the point. Let's get to the
Federalist 10, which every lawyer studies in law school, is on factions. And it says basically that nothing should be accomplished. You want to take all these dangerous people who can convince other people to do things, people who can get armies raised, and have them fighting constantly in Congress to get nothing done. And that way you lessen the danger.
I think that the American public is tired of that. I think we're tired of watching just everybody digging their heels in the sand. Let me flip over to Derek. Derek, before we get into that response, tell me, what is a libertarian and what does the party stand for? And how is it much different than the other parties?
Well, the roots of our philosophy, and first of all, we are a philosophy. We are not really a political movement. Our entire really effort is based on a philosophy of self-ownership and individual liberty. Okay, so really...
What does that mean exactly?
Okay, so self-ownership means I own my body. So, I mean, we can agree with that, right? We own our bodies.
Right.
Therefore, I own the labor that my body can produce. I own the fruits of the labor that my body produces. And nobody has a right to that unless I voluntarily offer it up through some sort of mutual engagement.
Break that down for me a little bit. I'm not sure I even understood what you said. Tell me what that means politically, because it is a political movement.
Well,
you can't say it's not a political movement.
Politically, the core of the libertarian movement is literally the opposite of what you see in government. Okay. So we believe in really the end all of our philosophy, which I don't go with that camp. Really, the end all of our philosophy is the absence of government and a voluntary environment where people interact with each other voluntarily, and they don't need a third party with guns and force and coercion to, and money and all the nonsense that we see in politics. So now, philosophically, I agree with that. Okay. But where we are now versus that is a big journey. So
tell me how that. Let's talk about the healthcare issue then. So how do libertarians feel about the healthcare?
So voluntarism is really the core of the free market.
Okay.
So we are absolutely the free market party.
Okay.
The Republicans like to talk about it. The Democrats don't quite so much. But we believe, first of all, you mentioned the early documents of our government. Why are we even in health? Where does it say we should even be in the healthcare industry? I mean, that's our argument.
And that's
why are we even there at all?
Do you believe everyone is entitled to healthcare? Is that what your philosophy is?
Under the founding documents of this country? No, it's not in there at all.
So why are we even really in that space? Why are we doing that? Why are we spending so much time on that?
Well, because the citizens are demanding it. Other countries in our position, as far as being powerful, rich countries, all have healthcare systems. We have a healthcare system. We pay more than anyone else in the world, and we get the least service. Mm-hmm. So, in trying to fix that,
what about all the wonderful things that we do get that other countries don't get?
Well,
we have the freedom to do all those things, and you know, when we're forcing and mandating people to pay exorbitant amounts of money for healthcare, and many people cannot afford it. How do you justify us moving forward in that direction?
Well, we do it now. We have a healthcare system, and we will anyway. And we pay for it one way or another anyway, okay? Mm-hmm. So then the question is, how do you manage that? The system we have now, poor people don't have a regular doctor, they go to the emergency room. Then when you have your insurance and you go to the doctors, you say, well, why is this a $35 aspirin pill?
Right.
Because of the 8 people that came in that couldn't pay anything. The whole thing is, how do you go ahead and manage it? One way or another, we do.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But we regulate the insurance companies, so even if it's private, and maybe a libertarian, maybe not, might say, well, it's private and you have your private. If you're going in with insurance, it's really not, okay? Because the government sets the rules for the insurance company. Then the insurance company makes their profit. The idea of a single payer is just something I think that is getting more popular all the time. And surprisingly
I'm actually hearing
quickly.
Some conservatives liking the
what do you
think about single payer?
That before?
I think it's foolish. I mean, competition is what drives costs down. Legislators do not drive costs down. Legislators need to be elected to office, therefore their interest is getting elected to office, and they are going to get in relationships with crony corporations, and the integrity of it is gone. What the free market does, and what true, raw, pure competition does, is it disarms greed. The greedy corporation can't be greedy, and then you add social media to it, and you add the ability for human beings who are wronged through crony government to go on. Look what happened with United Airlines when they drug the guy out. And I mean we don't need to get into the details of that.
That's a whole show. And
then there was the guy. Then there was the guy that bought the rights to some AIDS medication and then jacked it up 4,000. But my point is the consumers have the power in a true free market. Legislators that are paid and bought and paid for by crony corporations and big pharma.
This sounds more like the Republican Party.
But here's the thing: we have a free market system more than anyone else now, and we have the most expensive for the least service.
We don't actually have.
Let's pivot a little bit here. I wanted to obviously I believe you were a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Yeah.
Okay, and you supported.
I supported Gary Johnson. As a libertarian.
Actually, we signed. It was funny. We were talking about this. My friend Melissa McGee and I were sign waving across from you in Windermere at the little circle there. Yeah. But you were relatively friendly. But Roger, I'm going to let you start because I know you're just going to go off on him. But in fairness, I did work for the president on the campaign, and you were always very respectful of that. You never tried to say, Randy, what are you doing? You're nuts. You're crazy. You were actually, even though I know you didn't like him, so I want to get that out of the way. And then we'll talk about your candidate. But go ahead and explain to me why did you support Bernie Sanders in that socialist type approach and versus someone that might have been better for the country? What are your thoughts? Why did you go down that road?
Well, if you phrase it that way, it's hard to
that was a nice little jab.
Yeah, nice little edit there. Because I wasn't hugely enamored of Bernie Sanders, but I felt he had the most realistic, practical ideas. Trump, I haven't liked. I'm from New York originally. I've hated him since the 80s. Just a foul man, foul human being.
But you're such a nice man. By the way, Peter Alden agrees with you. Great points, Derek. I want to just give props to a couple people who are in here. Sean McQuaid said that you actually love Trump. he said that. And then James Copenhaver says, "Oh boy, this is about to get good."
In a way, I'm glad that Trump's president, actually, but I can get to that. But I also didn't like Hillary Clinton.
Really?
No, not at all. Not at all. and I thought she'd be horrible.
Let me ask
for the
you
country.
a different question if you're prepared to answer it. When you voted then, did you vote in that election for president?
I did.
You did.
And
you don't have to tell me you voted.
I held my nose while I was voting, I can tell you that. I didn't think either was good for the country. And in a way, I'm glad that Trump is president because I think that either person who got the presidency, it was going to be nothing but scandal after scandal.
Yeah, they had 8 years of mess to clean up with that one. That's
she's got, 30 years of mess to clean up. And so does Trump. So in a way, whoever got in was going to get slammed, had all these problems. So in a way, I'm glad Trump made it because it hurts him and the people who...
Derek, we're going to switch over to you now. Tell us why Johnson might have been a better president.
So I did work for the number 2 Libertarian candidate, Austin Peterson. But when Gary did win at our convention, I mean, I went all in for him. I was the Orange County point of contact for his campaign, and like you said, you saw me out on the streets. And honestly, I met Gary several times. You know, he was a proven governor, 2-term governor in New Mexico, which was a heavily Democratic state. So you talk about working across party lines. I mean, here was a guy that unfortunately didn't get mass appeal, but I believe probably could have bridged the gap. We would be having a very different conversation right now about healthcare, I believe, under the direction of not only a third party, you know, I'm not in your camp or your camp, but someone who had a proven record of being able to work across party lines.
Are you seeing growth of the Libertarian Party?
Absolutely.
I mean, it started in 1971, correct? And I know that in Orange County specifically, but throughout the country, we're seeing a huge shift. Actually, MPAs in Orange County and Libertarians, et cetera, all those, since December of this year, they had over 6,000 people became part of that process. About 4,400 were Democrats and about 2,200 were Republicans, but we happen to be in a very liberal city. Let's kind of shift away just a little bit. I want to talk about media. Roger and I think we surely can agree on this. Do you think the media's treatment of our president and politicians in general is fair?
Well, the media is there to make money. You know, they're a business.
So we acknowledge, you agree with me?
To an extent, not as far as you're gonna take it.
Do you watch CNN?
No, I really don't watch.
Where do you get your news from?
I get my news, a lot of it online, BBC, a lot of the foreign publications.
Where do you get your news from, Derek?
Mostly through social media. I link to like The and Reason magazines and more liberty-leaning Mises, that kind of stuff.
Do you ever watch Fox?
Not on purpose.
But you know, Randy, this is the problem that was self-made by Trump, taking on the media as an enemy, and with what's coming up with Russia, taking on the intelligence community. When you come out and you fire the first shot, when they fire back at you, you can't say it's unexpected.
Yeah, but you know, are you watching any of those? Oh, there's Ruth Nation. He's running for governor. Just joined us. Are you watching any of those memes that come out though? Those ones attacking the media. Those are pretty funny. You have to admit those.
I honestly, I didn't support Trump, but just the.
I think he's doing a pretty good job combating it.
Just the shakedown that's happening to the status quo is on a level something that's amusing to me.
Well, I think and I think you'll probably agree with this too, Roger. I don't think we realized how messed up the media really was, and how how subjective they were being. And I think if he's done anything else, and yes, I agree with you, there are times where he comes at them punching, and they're going to punch back, and vice versa. But I do believe we've learned that there's some dishonesty in the media.
Well, when we did away with the fairness doctrine, you know, I remember when we were kids, and they'd have to come on late at night. Now for an opposing view, you'd usually be somebody pretty nutty. But when you get an application to have a radio station or a TV station or anything, you had to conduct studies and show that you were going to do something good for the community. Sure. There was a need you were going to fill.
Right.
Now it's just pure business. Used to be when you had the big three.
Right.
The news networks all lost money.
Sure.
Massive amounts of money, but it was a public service of what made the networks great, and it was a vanity thing.
Right.
Back when we had our great, Walter Cronkites and people like that.
I remember those days. Those were good days.
They were.
Those were good days.
They did away with all the fairness doctrine, started saying, well, it's all about the money, put MBAs in charge. Boy, I saw something back in the 80s, a chart of MBAs granted in the U.S.
Right.
and the U.S. economy. Both opposite directions, mirror images. And by making it where it had to pay for itself and taking away any fairness, now fairness is saying well, you believe the earth is round, let's find a guy who thinks the earth is flat and have you debate as if both views are equal.
Right.
And they're not.
One of the very first porch chats that we did back in 2015, we talked about the issue of medical marijuana. It wasn't legal at the time. Actually, Roger was one of my guests on that show.
Yep.
And as we know, it's now legal, but there are still some challenges going on in the state of Florida. So I'd like to get your perspective on what your thoughts are regarding medical marijuana. I know you're a supporter of marijuana total legalization. Well, hell,
all drugs.
You'll go for everything on that one.
I may be more libertarian than Derek.
But I want to talk to you about simple things like trying to understand why our legislator wanted to fight against rolling, the marijuana versus using a vapor or something to that extent. Why are we so caught up on medical marijuana, and is it really a transition to other drugs?
Well, if you want the gateway drug, which they always talk about, it's the one that I'm addicted to, cigarettes. Everybody smokes cigarettes before they use any other drug. Then it's alcohol, and then if people move on to other drugs, it goes from there. Marijuana.
But aren't we an addictive society in general? I mean,
yes.
It doesn't mean it could be anything. I mean, it could be wine, it could be beer. I mean, we just have that addictive habit about us. So I'm not sure that's
social media.
So I know I'm sitting here watching all these feeds. That's why you see me looking down to make sure if you're asking a question, I can answer it.
Human beings. I mean, wine goes back forever. Beer goes back forever. Both addictive substances. Marijuana goes back almost forever.
But it's a plant. See, I have a hard.
So
go ahead.
Here's a question.
What's a libertarian?
No. But let's go back to that. We talked about being just by nature addictive people, right?
Right.
So if you aren't harming anybody else, why does it matter?
Exactly. That's my point.
Okay.
So from a libertarian perspective, get out of my business.
Well, we have, and I didn't get to it earlier, but we have what's called the non-aggression principles. So, and that is sort of one of the cores of our philosophy. And why does it matter what I choose to do with my body and my mind? And as long as I don't invade your right to your life, liberty, and property, if I do what I do over here, who cares? You know, and that's
but that
the problem.
Sounds really loosey-goosey. It almost sounds like if there's a stoplight that has and there's a red light, you should be able to drive right through it. Is that what you're saying?
I just fought the red light cameras in Apopka a few weeks ago with some libertarians. I mean,
now the arguments against, which I don't agree with, is people say, well, if you're smoking pot, then you're not working and you're not paying your taxes, so therefore I'm hurt. I don't agree with that argument, but that's one of the arguments that they make against.
Listen, anything that makes you want to...
Well, taxation is theft, if you want to go there.
So anything that makes you want to eat and go to sleep, I don't understand anyway. That's not my idea.
A lot of people have trouble sleeping and get addicted to opium.
But listen, the other thing about self-ownership is responsibility. So if I choose to live a lifestyle, and I see where you're going with that, and I want to touch on that. We're not immune to this concept.
Sure.
You know, if my lack of responsibility becomes a burden to those around me, that's a legitimate conversation. Okay, so you know, the problem is locking people in cages for nonviolent crimes is also not a solution.
Yep.
Okay, so the dialogue needs to happen, and we need to, you know, a lot of people in my camp want to legalize everything. You know, I don't really.
That's a fun camp.
And I'll be honest with you. Philosophically, I agree.
Portugal's had a lot of luck with it.
Philosophically,
very.
So you're talking about legalizing cocaine or all these different
things.
Oregon?
Things?
Portugal.
Oh, Portugal.
Well,
Oregon is talking about it right now.
Portugal's been very, very successful with it.
Before we transition and talk about John Morgan and who's the person that was doing that, I want to make sure we're going to be talking about the governor's race in just a second, and it's interesting that we have a candidate for governor in here with us. But I want to talk to you about open carry. Over in Seminole County recently, you know, the tax collector allowed people to openly carry a gun, and I wanted to get your thoughts. You're a criminal defense attorney,
right.
And then of course your thoughts on that in general. So go ahead, Roger. What was when you heard about that? What did you think?
Well, my thoughts get a bit more complicated. I come from a small farm town. Had my first shotgun when I was 13. Guns are fun.
Wow, Daniel Boone.
Well,
so Roger, you're really a libertarian and you don't know.
No, Roger's definitely a Trump-loving.
I was a libertarian back when you guys were considered left wing. I was a libertarian. I'm probably a social anarchist, which is very similar. Okay. But so I have no problem. I served in the Army. Had an M16 with me all the time. I have guns now. I've had guns. I have no problem with guns. I have a lot of problems with a lot of the people who have guns and want guns. It does seem to be an issue, though.
But guns aren't the problem, Roger. I mean, let's be honest.
What it
guns
seems
are not
to
the
be
problem.
is population density. In cities, where the population's too dense, people start shooting each other. In the country, you never see that stuff happening.
Are you trying to suggest that the reason that people are shooting themselves, like people in Chicago,
I was just going to go there.
is because the population of the town is too large?
I don't know. There seems to be a correlation.
What do you do? At 7-Eleven and you don't get your Slurpee fast enough? Well, you just pop one off and shoot somebody? Is that your rationale?
Some people, what I see in being a criminal defense lawyer is guns let people's stupidest thoughts come through in the most aggressive way.
So it doesn't mean guns aren't. It could be.
Listen, I just finished a case where the guy.
It could be a box truck. I mean, the 9/11 planes were taken down with box cutters. The weapon is not the problem.
Oh, but how about in England where they just had all the attacks with the knives? What, 3-4 people got killed, not 50.
Yeah, if people had guns at Pulse, no, if people had guns, I guarantee you that would not have been as many people being killed, in my opinion.
I'm on board with you, Randy.
It
is a core.
See, you're a conservative.
Well, Reagan even said that the true core of conservatism is libertarianism. So if you want to really get down to the root of conservatism, it is self-ownership. It's rights of individual. The right for you and I to be able to protect ourselves is not given to us by a generous government. It is a right by God, Creator, universe, whatever you want to call it. I have a right to protect myself, period.
Let me just give you a couple of comments of feedback over on Orange County Political Voice. Joseph Boyd, who is actually one of our admins over there, says, the Republicans of Reagan are the libertarians of now. The Democrats of Reagan are the Republicans of now. And the socialists of Reagan are the Democrats of now. It's all shifting. Agree? Is that fair?
No.
Of course you're not going to agree it's fair. And then Sean McQuaid, he might be a potential libertarian there for you.
I think I will say there's a big shift. I'm not a big fan of boxes and trying to predict where we're all going to go. I hope everybody's going to wake up and be libertarian.
All right, let's shift over and talk about the governors of Florida. Everybody understands that Governor Rick Scott is term limited and will be terming out in 2018. He's been a great governor. He has been a great governor. He's got a lot accomplished in the 8 years out, and we're looking forward to him possibly running for Senate. He hasn't announced yet, but that'd be a definite possibility. So I want to talk. I know that Bruce Nathan is on here. He's declared he's running for governor. We know that John Morgan, who is, for people who may not be familiar, John Morgan is a very powerful attorney that actually we happen to be broadcasting from his building today, but a very powerful attorney who, in fact, led and put a lot of money into the medical marijuana initiative because he had a brother that had been in a swimming accident or something and needed the medical marijuana to cope. And he's been very compassionate in that, has recently filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida because you cannot roll marijuana as part of this medical marijuana initiative. And other names that are out there are Adam Putman has announced that he's running. He's the Republican, one of the Republican candidates. So what are your thoughts about what the Florida state of... Oh, you have one?
We have a governor candidate. His name is Randy Weissman. He's a good friend of mine.
I like his first name.
He's a small business owner from Mount Dora. Randy is a former Republican. He was actually the. A lot of us are recovering Republicans in the Libertarian Party, but Randy was he was the chairman, I believe, whatever the elected leadership position for the school board of Lake County. So there was a right-wing evangelical movement back in the 90s in the school boards in Central Florida, and Randy and a few other moderate Republicans stood their ground and won and kept what many of us believe was a right-wing shift.
What happened to that group of Republicans? Did they all go?
I don't know. I don't know.
You don't see many.
I don't know. But Randy, I don't think Randy's on here yet. He probably had another engagement, but definitely a libertarian option. And we may have others.
And if you find the link to him, go back please into the comments and put that in there, folks.
Yeah.
We always try after this show stays up. And we try to go back in if something came up and put it in there. So we'll do that. The state of Florida went red again in 2016. We tend to lean that way. What are your thoughts regarding the Democratic possibility for governor in 2018?
Well, the way the Democratic Party has been the last at least 6 months, they're in real trouble.
Yeah,
they have an opportunity here, and they have not.
I asked him what the Libertarian Party is and stands for, and I'd like to ask you, what does the Democratic Party stand for, Roger?
I'd like to know that too.
Well, now 2-1, people say they stand for I'm against Trump, and that's it.
That's not a very good place to be. Do you agree?
No, I agree. It's a terrible place to be. It's been a while, and I think Bill Clinton, though I thought he was a decent president, but I thought he was probably our greatest Republican president, might have a lot to do with it.
Why would you even say that? That's interesting to me.
Well, because if you look at what he actually did, was pretty much what it was a traditional Republican agenda. You know, he was well, the country as a whole tends to lean center right. The entirety of America,
and I think that's because in the hearts of people, there's just this allegiance we feel, and I think it's a valid one, to patriotism, which we feel we've seen. You know, when I was out when I was out looking for signatures when I was running for office, I always knew if I was walking up to a Republican house because there was an American flag flying there. And I was always right. It was always right when I asked.
And that's something that I feel bad about with Democrats, because I had a neighbor who was very elderly and her flag was all ratty, and I got a new flag and put it up. I used to bury people with that flag.
That's right. You were in the military.
I was in the 101st.
This is Jacob Ingalls. Jacob's been on our show before. He's
he's a great guy.
Central Florida Post. He says, "Love Derek's shirt," and this gives you an opportunity to talk about it. And LGBT done of being killed, censored for supporting liberty. So why don't you share with us what does that mean? I see it all over the place.
Well, for the record, I got married to a woman 2 Saturdays ago, so I'm actually not gay. I do have many friends that are, and you know, I got this shirt. We as libertarians want to reach out to the LGBTQ. Help me out here.
Add the Q, but they just keep adding and adding and adding.
And the reason is, and this is
the whole alphabet will stand for something.
Well, this is worth noting, and this is another little description of who we are. You know, we as libertarians fight for the smallest of all minorities, which is the individual. And so based on that, we've also always fought for the rights of the gay and lesbian and all your other letters community.
All your other letters. It's true.
But you know, the bottom line is really when you see this, there's so much collectivism in politics today. You know, it's this group, we're offended by a statue and we want to take it down and we want our group to be happy. Well, then you just piss off another group. You know, and this shift is just nonsense, and that's just one of many, many examples.
Federalist 10,
whatever it is. But you know, we fight for the true minority, which is the individual.
But you know, I'll ask this question, and certainly as an openly gay Republican and worked on the Trump campaign, I get a lot of feedback from that. But I want to talk to you about. You know, it does seem like the Democratic Party is really focused on a lot of social issues. And since you brought up the whole LGBT acronym comment, what are your thoughts on that? Because in some ways, I find it a little discouraging when the LGBT community hijacks, in my opinion, racism and gender issues, etc. So what are your thoughts about that? Should that be part of the platform? Because I know a lot of people think that Trump hates the gays and all this stuff. That's not true. It's a ridiculous comment. He has done nothing to infringe upon the rights of any folks at this point. But what are your thoughts about that, Roger?
You know, when I moved to town here in 1995, took a job as an assistant public defender, and used to defend a lot of gay people, hanging out in Lake Eola Park.
Wow.
And undercover cops would hang out there.
We can see Lake Eola Park.
You can see it right from here. Yeah. And they used to hang out by the bathrooms and proposition, undercover cops.
Wow.
And then if the guy showed any interest, they'd arrest him. And we'd go into court and argue over and over that, well, Judge, if this was a man and a woman and these things were said, would there be a crime? They said no. Well, then it can't be a crime if it's a man and a man.
Was there money involved?
No.
Yeah.
That seems a bit of a stretch there, a little bit. Go ahead.
Well, but that's what we're dealing with daily. And just about everybody in our office, about 80 or 100 attorneys, had gay clients that in this park or another park.
So maybe that's why you're comfortable talking to gay people, because you don't seem to have an issue with it.
I've never had it. I came from the small farm town with a couple gay kids that everybody hated. I never had a problem. But I don't care. I like gay people because then there's more women.
And we're happy. Well, but they're kind of mean to each other sometimes too. Let's not get it. So up in Atlanta, Georgia, they spent, I believe, or as Medea would say, she says Georgia. But up in Atlanta, they spent $160,000 or $125,000. I don't know, a lot of money, 6 figures, on a crosswalk that has the rainbow flag symbol. And now the city of Orlando, literally less than a block away from where the Pulse tragedy took place, is considering the same situation. So I'm guessing. Do you feel like we're just seeing the rainbow just a little too much in Orlando, or are you okay with it? What are your thoughts about that?
I'm fine with it. The only issue I have with the rainbow is I'm confused by because I thought it was Jesse Jackson's group and then it became the gay symbol, and I don't know what happened there. But except for that, no, I don't have any problem with it.
What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think it is the role of local government to spend taxpayer money to do things for one group and offend another group. So, honestly, this, and I commented on your page about this, I'm supportive of this as long as it's funded voluntarily. If a dime of...
But I don't know how you ever take care... Well, even if you got the initial project funded, it's going to have maintenance for years and years and years, and I would imagine the city would have to take that over at some point.
Well, and this
is the same city that's taking down Confederate, statues,
which I think is $120,000 to move a statue that sat perfectly fine for 100 years.
That was falling apart. That the rifle was missing. Nobody ever cared about it.
But we never had the option.
It seems to me a little disingenuous to care about it now.
What?
But the dialogue...
It was there for 100 years.
It was falling apart. And nobody cared about it.
Well, then maybe they should have spent some money to fix it up.
Maybe they should have.
The dialogue never went to the place of, hey, if you Orlando citizens enjoy this statue enough, would you voluntarily donate some money that could be used for the maintenance of this so it doesn't become a burden on the taxpayers?
That again goes back to
never happened.
Because it was hijacked by a very loud liberal group, and all of a sudden, who was going to sit there and say, "Oh, we should keep the statue because it stands for this and the other"?
It seemed to me it was almost overnight. Just all of a sudden, some politicians.
Well, that's because often that occurs.
We hear the word populist a lot, and you clearly heard it on the right with the Trump movement. Not saying that is what it is, but I believe that this is a left populist movement to make this big production out of moving all these monuments and wiping away this history and making some big production about it in the guise of doing something moral. When
I'm going to agree with you.
I mean, it is history, and
how would you feel
why wasn't it a problem 10 years ago?
But it existed. To suggest that we should just take it down, I just don't know if I agree with that.
But how would you feel though if you were living in Germany, you're Jewish and there's statues of Hitler everywhere, or you're in Moscow and there's statues to Stalin everywhere? There are people who feel threatened in that kind of environment. And
I would argue that unless someone went up and read that statue and what it stood for, most people walked by it for many years and never even knew what it was.
When I first got to town, I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe they have this here."
I went out there that morning. I spoke in front of the city council for that motion. Which
I'm sure the decision was
already
made.
They had already decided. Yeah. That was more of a
public
due
comments.
diligence. Look at us. But I went out there to the monument that morning, and I videoed and interviewed. I would say probably 20 people, and honestly, a few of
these people that were for or against
of dark skin. And honestly, by and large, the opinion of everybody was, who cares about this monument?
Right.
It's been here. I mean, it's so beautiful. The setting is beautiful.
Once it got touched on social media,
and that's the problem with these minority, loud. That's the problem with these loud minority political movements. Is they hijack and they get the media involved and they get these types of things accomplished, and and it's a shame. I mean, my point is, what are they going to go to next? What's their next?
Well, let's transition to the state of Florida is back in the conversation, if you will, about casinos. We know that Disney has had a lobbying group that is very much against casinos.
Of course.
I don't even know if this is party directed, but I would like to get your feedback on what your thoughts are regarding. We should ask Bruce Nathan. Bruce, while you're on here, tell us what you think about casinos. If you were governor, would you support that? But what are your thoughts about casinos and gambling coming to the state of Florida? I mean, we're already, lottos out there. If you go to a reservation, like down to Hard Rock or something, you can gamble. So what are your thoughts?
If you want to be a sucker and lose your money, I'd just like to see the state get a cut so it lowers my taxes.
Oh, I'm sure the state would definitely get a huge cut.
Yeah, so that's fine with me.
What's a libertarian perspective on that?
I mean, are you harming anybody by going out to a casino and spending your money and possibly losing it or winning money? I mean, are you causing a crime? Are you hurting or violating another person?
Some people will argue yes.
How?
I don't agree with that.
How?
The guy with the gambling problem who spends all the rent money and his wife and kids.
But isn't he probably already spending that on lottery tickets?
I'm on your side. I'm just telling you what other people say. I mean, I can give you the counter argument, but I don't really believe in it.
So what about the guy that gets into hot rods and he wants to spend all his money on hot rods because his addiction is driving fast cars? I mean, is that guy now? Like, where do we stop? Where do we stop when we use the government? When we use the government to basically moderate or mediate the vices of people. I mean, where do we go?
Here's what I like, because I have a motorcycle. Now, if I'm in my car...
a Harley?
No, I can't afford a Harley.
You're a lawyer!
But if I'm riding my motorcycle... Now, if I'm riding in my car, I have to have my seatbelt on, right? Mm-hmm. If I have my helmet on, or my motorcycle, I have to have a helmet. Well, if I'm driving a vehicle, where's the seatbelt for my motorcycle? if it's so important.
Gotcha.
You know, some of these things, and they're kind of like what you're saying with these people coming up saying, I don't care about the statute. I don't know how many people actually do care. If there's somebody who really does feel threatened, I feel bad for that person. I don't know if there is. I've never had anyone tell me they are. Personally, I just don't care enough to care either way if they leave it up or tear it down. I don't care either way.
Right. And I think most people didn't. You had a loud minority that
you may be right.
And then you had elected officials that wanted to
capitalize.
That wanted to maximize on that opportunity.
But there's so many things that are just
we had a
up there
person that made a comment. I just want to share this, going back to the statute for just a second. Kim Murray, if the Masons fall out of favor with the radical left, do they demand the teardown of all the Masonic symbology in our culture? Rip down the Washington Monument? Question mark. Burn all the $100 bills? Question mark. Question mark. Destroying history is one of the tenets of socialism. What do you think, Roger?
Well, all radical political ideologies try to kill or change history, right and left. But you know, that it makes me think of the Ten Commandments. One reason you'll never see the Ten Commandments not being allowed to be shown by the Supreme Court. Go to the U.S. Supreme Court. They're all over their doors. All that all those symbols are carved in, so they'd have to tear down their own building. The Masonic temple that Washington used to go to.
Maybe we need to think harder about, before we put something up, than working so hard to tear things down. And you know, even that rainbow-colored crosswalk, there might be 20 years from now, that might be something that people rally against, and they don't believe it should be out there. This opinion that everything that has a cultural sounds nice now isn't necessarily a need to have.
Here's a problem, and I can't go real deep in this because I'm really still identifying my own opinion of it. But you know, the private property versus public property argument that is one of the cores of our philosophy. You know, when you create a government that we don't think should have been there in the first place, and then that government buys property and has assets that belong to the people, you see you've created an arena now for all of these types of arguments.
I find it curious that you keep referring to the Libertarian Party as philosophy versus a platform. Is it really the same?
It is a philosophy. It
almost sounds like
we have a guiding light. So when
what does that mean?
So when we get officials elected, and we're doing it on the small level of government now, and we've got my friend Larry Sharp's running for governor of New York. He's got a lot of momentum behind him.
Explain to me the guiding light.
You know, the guiding light is that when we have an elected official in there and they are looking at different legislation that's on their desk, they're going to be using the non-aggression principle and self-ownership and that philosophy as a guiding light. You know, is this even really the role of government to put this legislation in? You know, because there's always force, there's always coercion behind government, because some people want this, but some people don't.
Have you done any studies to see within the Libertarian Party, how many people transferred out of the Democratic Party make up your Libertarian Party? How many come out of the Republican Party? Where's the majority? You don't have to give me exact numbers. But
you know,
are most the libertarians?
I think like Roger said, you know, early on there was definitely a shift from the left. But then with the Ron Paul and some others in our history, we had a shift from the right. We are the only really true fiscally conservative party.
No, I don't.
So from an economic standpoint,
that's just simply not true.
One thing I like about the libertarians though a lot.
but let's look at what Republicans are doing elected Republicans. Let's base it.
Oh, I'm not pleased with what's happening.
We've got a $21 trillion deficit. You know, we've got
that deficit existed with Trump coming into office. And you know, if we want to get back on Trump, if we allowed Trump to do the job that he was elected to do, this country would be a much better place.
Right, but it didn't start with Trump. Trump's not the reason we have a 21. And I get it. There was a Democrat, but then there was a Republican, and there was a. So
Trump's spending plenty of money.
All right, let's go back.
But one thing, if I can say that I like about libertarians,
Roger,
and hopefully they keep this, is the idea of it being a philosophy. With communism, Karl Marx said, look, this will never work. You'd have to change human nature. Then people ignored that, and you ended up with the Soviet Union and China and some horrible crimes against humanity. If they had realized this is a philosophy, it can't be taken literally. And hopefully the libertarians keep that, because to some extent everybody's socialist. We all like to have roads to bring people to our businesses. We like to have some
is that what you said?
To a certain extent. We want roads.
Roger.
You want to do it with roads? You want to do away with all police forces?
No, I just don't know if we're all socialists. But
to that, I said to some extent.
Yeah, okay.
To that extent, you want roads?
We are a
That's
blended
socialist
economy.
enterprise.
We have to admit that. We
Right.
are a mixture. We are a mixture of free market capitalism and socialism.
And we probably want to stay
guys,
that
we've got
way.
about 20 minutes left, so I want to talk about a couple of other races
Sure.
real
That's
quickly. As we know, the Orange County Sheriff is now announced that he's running for mayor, so we're going to have an open sheriff seat in Orange County, and uniquely in that situation, he's been there a long time. I believe the prior sheriff Kevin Berry was a Republican. Then we had to shift to Jerry Demings, who's a Democrat. Knowing that this town does skew Democrat, what are your thoughts about? I really want to know, as a criminal defense attorney, Roger, are we safer in this town than we used to be? I mean, you can't turn on the television without crimes in Pine Hills consistently being up there on ongoing. It seems like people are shooting people every day, and it's part of the news. So what are your thoughts about the next sheriff and what their primary responsibilities
When I
should
first
be?
moved here, I watched the news. I was like, oh my God, my ex-wife, she was pregnant. Like, what am I bringing my child into?
So it was bad back then, too.
Oh, it's terrible. And then I realized, as I got to know the area, that these awful crimes were occurring sometimes 50 miles away.
Right.
The way the news reports them, you think it's all in your backyard. So I think it's overblown. But again, that's good for business.
Yeah,
Overblown
unfortunately, you're probably
fear
right
of
about
crime.
that. Any thoughts on the sheriff's race? Anything Libertarians going to get in the sheriff's race?
Probably not at this time. That's definitely a little bit bigger seat than I think we're quite ready, and our infrastructure isn't in place. But my hope is that the leader of that movement in Orange County and Orlando would not want to lock every nonviolent criminal up in the cage, and that we can start looking at easing back on.
But that's not up really to the police.
What's that?
It's not really up to
that's
the
really a
police.
legislation issue.
The legislation says who to arrest, and then the judicial says who to put in prison.
when they're making that decision
I've been pulled over by police officers
So has Aramis and
often
Taylor.
in my lifetime, and I've been in situations with them where that individual does have a moment where they can choose
Right.
to take.
So it's selective. You are
that's what I'm
okay
saying.
with selective enforcement.
I mean, it exists, so yes.
And that's not the elected official, like Randy was starting to say.
Yeah,
I don't know if the party makes much of a
Well, but
difference.
it's a top down. It's still a top down leadership.
Greg Fournier just joined us out of New York. Says hello, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
Greg actually worked on your campaign when you ran for judge.
Yes,
was a big Trump supporter. Don't want to throw that out there again. Well, it does transition me back to my conversation.
I can have friends that have different beliefs than my own.
But Mayor of Orange County, now that's a really big deal that's getting ready to happen, and we're going to start seeing a lot of people throwing their hats into the ring. As we know, Jerry Demings has done that. We've heard rumors that Orange County Commissioner Pete Clark is going to get in the race, that Orange County Chairman for Schools Bill Sublette might get in. We don't know who all. I had former Orange County Mayor Rich Crotty on the show the other evening. He's tossing the idea around. What are your thoughts about how that race is going to skew?
For mayor?
For mayor of Orange County.
This is going to be interesting. Jerry Demings I wouldn't count out. On a personal level, he's a great guy. And I'll disclose, I consider Jerry a friend. I was probably the first one in Orange County to ever cut him a campaign check for when he ran for sheriff. Great guy, and he's done a lot of good things in the sheriff's office. I know there's still some problems and some turmoil in the sheriff's office with some of the things he's done, but a lot of the misconduct that I used to see regularly under Barry, I mean, just terrible misconduct.
Now I do hear the opposite. Just so you know, I hear a lot of sheriffs that really aren't that pleased with the leadership style. But I asked you, I heard the same thing about Val Demings when she was the police chief.
And boy, OPD cleaned up when she was there, and I don't like them now, and I didn't like them before. But during then, they cut out a lot of the nonsense that I used to see out on the street.
So, any predictions on who might be the mayor of our county?
It's too early. It's too early, but it really could be Jerry. He's a very effective politician. You meet Jerry, and a year later, he'll remember your first name. After meeting him 30 seconds, he's very talented.
Thoughts?
That's not an area of expertise for me, but I definitely like what you just described, and I would imagine that's a recipe for success for any candidate.
I want to talk briefly about the City of Orlando District 5 race, and you know, in fairness, I need to tell you that I had worked on and volunteered on that campaign before, and you were a supporter. I have represented Commissioner Regina Hill. Now she's going up for re-election, this area for you guys, so you know that if you don't live here in Orlando, that area represents primarily an area of our town that's considered socioeconomic depressed and has some challenges. There's been allegations of gentrification of the area. That's where, you know, everything west of I-4. Most of us wouldn't drive through there unless we had to go through there. It's not one of the nicest parts of town, but they've worked really hard on it. But that race has a number of people in it. Any thoughts on that District 5 race that you're willing to give?
I'm friendly with two different people running for that, and they're both really good people.
I know one of them.
Well, the Ali's helped with, remember the fellow that owned all those course and all that we helped out?
Oh, that's right. You did. They did help
Stacey
you with that.
Ali
That's right.
helped out on that.
Yeah.
And I thought they were really nice people. Regina, I love Regina to death. So, you know.
Yeah. Your thoughts on that race?
Well, I'm a landscape professional. I'm in commercial landscape sales, and our office is right off
do we get discounts?
Right off of Michigan. It's
a fair question.
Yeah. Right off of Michigan and 441. Well, you will if you introduce me to the developer that was on here earlier. But I mean, you know, our office is right in that OBT.
Is it really?
Yeah, so I mean,
So have you seen some of the
super,
action that's gone on over there related to her?
All the time. No, I'm not too honestly not too familiar with the candidates running, but I certainly am familiar with the needs of that area.
So it seems like the Libertarian Party stays really big picture. It hasn't really gotten that much involved in local politics.
To be fair, we're trying to change that, and honestly, a year ago is when I got involved with our.
How many Libertarians are in Orange County? Do we know?
We're registered. I think we're over 2,000.
Oh, okay.
As far as active, you know, that's a whole nother challenge.
Like that,
so, you know, our affiliate, our political affiliate here, you know, really wasn't very active a year ago. So a whole bunch of us got involved, and we are really starting to get some momentum. And
I think all the local parties are going through some type of challenge that's related to how they're growing, what they're standing for. I think that would all
the major parties too. I think everybody right now.
So
we're in an interesting time politically. As a country.
Absolutely.
We don't know where we want to go.
So our focus is what we've targeted, just being realists, are really the lowest level of elected officials, which are community development districts, special taxing districts. If they're large enough in volume and residents, and they're old enough, they have elected officials or appointed officials. And so we've had success across the state of getting libertarians in those seats, and these are building blocks. You always hear us running for like soil and water and those types of things. We are trying to consult with. I've got a friend running for Orange County Commission, like I mentioned, and though.
And where's that?
He's running for Brian Nelson's seat.
So up in District 2.
Yeah, Antoine Bibbs is his name. Right. I grew up with him. He's a friend of mine, and so in lieu of us having a candidate in that race. We're at least trying to consult.
I think it's a fair assessment
and work with a candidate.
Especially Republicans have some work cut out for them in Orange County. Not just that the numbers are backwards, but I think that Brian Nelson running for a popular mayor was a surprise. I don't think that we were currently ready for him to leave, and as we know, he is a Republican that went into that situation and is running for a popular mayor. And I know him personally, great man. He's going to do great things for a popular. I also know Brian. And then you've got District 4, which is currently occupied by a conservative, but it looks like that there's now a left-leaning district. So we could potentially see a huge shift in the Orange County Commission in general as related to, much more liberal perspective. But we only got about 10 minutes left, folks, and we do thank everyone for joining today. But I wanted to give both Roger and Derek an opportunity to let you know how to get in touch with them. I mean, Roger is a criminal defense attorney, so if you go out, you're tipping a couple and you get pulled over, he's the guy you want to call. So, Roger, you can let us know that. And if you want to let people know how to get involved in the Libertarian Party of Orange County, we can certainly put that link in here as well. So, Roger?
Sure. I'm, as Randy said, criminal defense attorney. Been here in Orlando about 25 years now. Practice with my wife, so our firm is Scott Medlin.
And she's really nice.
She's really nice and a great attorney, too.
Yeah.
She likes to point out she's been a lawyer 3 days longer than me.
Oh, really? Is that where you guys met, was in law school?
No, we were public defenders together.
Oh.
Right across the street from where we are now.
Is that a requirement of attorney to become a public defender?
No, but generally either...
But a lot of them do.
A lot do. Well, the easiest job to get out of law school is prosecutor. And then a little bit harder is public defender.
Tell Aramis Ayala that, our state attorney.
Traditionally, it's... and they.
We should have talked about that. I'm surprised we haven't.
Yeah, no...
We might have
to. We might have to. But so those are the two groups that usually go in.
But how does somebody get in touch with you, Roger? If they're
407-894-0055.
Say it again.
407-894-0055.
So if you have
also do asset forfeiture. So if they're trying to take your money or property, We have the government. We try that, take care of that too.
Good.
Nice.
Derek, if somebody wants to get involved in the Libertarian Party of Orange County, how would they do that?
So we meet regularly at the Orlando Brewery. Actually, tomorrow is our normal business meeting. We meet on the third Wednesday of each month, and then on the first Tuesday of each month, we have a social also at Orlando Brewery. Our Facebook page is Libertarian Party of Orange County, FL. You can find us there, and then if you want to call me and chat with me, my phone number is 321-231-3544.
Ben Fitzgerald has an interesting comment. It says, seems like governance by obstructionism has become the new norm. Would a formidable third party help or hurt? Wouldn't term limits be a huge first step to get these career politicians on both sides of the aisle out? I'm a huge supporter of term limits. Let me tell you, I'm certainly a supporter.
I can run point on that because there's definitely a division within our
party. This is your philosophy. You're going to tell us your philosophy.
No, there's just this is something that there is a division of ideas in our party because we all talk about term limits because we want to get the bad guys out, but what about the good ones? Mm-hmm. So and that's
But a lot of people suggest you don't need term limits because if someone's doing a bad job, you just go vote them out.
That's the traditional view.
But the problem is our system is it doesn't really work right now. I mean, the democratic system, what do we have, 11% or 7% approval rating for Congress?
Well, but if we have a 94...
let's not get into polls.
94%. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but clearly the dislike percentage is way lower than them getting reelected.
Sure.
So to have 100% faith and trust in the system is certainly debatable.
Right.
So personally, I am for the term limits argument.
Right.
Given our current climate.
And the comment about everything being against something. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen that with the two major parties.
Right.
Both is, everything has been about being against something. Our healthcare argument has been about that. Obamacare was, well, we hate what's there now. And then Trump cares, well, we hate this, which is basically the same thing. We hate what's there now.
Right.
Nobody has come up really with all that many new ideas.
Because somewhere down the line, I think that hate approach has started working. When you remember back in the 90s that you were getting in the early 2000s, all those mailers. You don't see that as much anymore. Now we have social media.
Right.
We can get all the hate on. In the last few minutes of the show, I do want to touch on this state attorney situation. And I'd be curious to hear, as an attorney and as a layperson, what your thoughts are on this. Long story short is, in Orange County, Osceola County combined, we have an elected state attorney position. In this particular race that was won this last year, where she beat out Jeff Ashton, and Jeff Ashton, for those of you who don't know, he was the Casey Anthony prosecutor on the case back when she allegedly got away with murder. Some people say that. I don't know if that's true or not. This lady that was elected got a lot of Soros money that came into her election, but she failed to tell everybody prior to being elected. And again, our problem for my asking the question, that she was against the death penalty. So I believe it was January, somewhere around there, she came out with a blanketed statement that her office would not seek the death penalty on any cases. And as a result, our governor removed her from a number of cases. So as an attorney, Roger, I'm curious, what do you feel about that decision and a blanket? You and I had I called you almost immediately, and we had an offline conversation. And what were your thoughts about that?
Well, I looked up all the various laws and statutes that apply, and some people have said, I know Beverly Burgess is one, gee, this should have come out during the election and should have been, and absolutely agree with that. But once you're there, it is within the state attorney's discretion on whether to charge with death penalty or not. And people say, well, it's unequal. Well, how about cohabitation? It's illegal to cohabitate in the state of Florida.
But
nobody prosecutes that law. So that's not a really good argument about,
but to make a blanketed statement that she was never going to seek the death penalty, Roger.
I think it's within her authority.
Well, obviously the governor didn't agree.
Yeah, because he's grandstanding to run for Senate.
Oh, I don't think that's why he did it. I actually don't believe that for a second. I believe the reason he did it is because of the blank. Listen, if she'd have done that press conference,
I would think less of him if he did it for a different reason. He wants to kill people that badly.
If she had done the press conference and decided on the case that she was making that decision on, that particular case, I would agree with you.
That would have been a lot smarter.
But now I think politically, in many ways, she's destroyed her political chances. But most likely, what's going to happen is she's going to get elevated at a national level. She could probably be, run at some huge position now, because there's many people, conservatives and liberals and sure libertarians, that disagree with the death penalty.
Yeah, and you may be right. I didn't like the way it was done. I didn't like it being an announcement out of the blue, not part of the campaign, and being a blanket statement instead of, in this case, I won't.
I don't even see how nobody asked her that question.
There are plenty of people.
Newspapers, television reporters. She was at.
There are judges and prosecutors who don't believe in the death penalty, but they don't come out and say so. They just say,
right.
Well, I don't think it's appropriate in this case. Except there's never.
What are your thoughts about that situation?
This is a tough one for me, because just to me, the whole concept of giving the state the authority to murder people is not something that I really have peace with. But then you read these stories of these real sicko people on the planet. So I mean, it's. I lean.
The case that sparked this was a gentleman that had not only killed his pregnant girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, he killed a police officer, and potentially that pursuit caused the death of another police officer. So, I mean, how much more do you need in order to?
Well, if I could just throw it, tomorrow my father would have been 85.
Mm-hmm.
Last year he was murdered by his caregiver. Now, out of respect for him, I would never ask for the death penalty. I'd like it if they'd arrest her or do something, but it's in another country and they don't care. Mm-hmm. But, like my dad used to say, I didn't give this person life. It's not my right to take it away.
That's certainly a prerogative.
And if you get into the money, that's a whole other issue. It costs so much to put somebody.
Greg Fournier agrees with you. Basic elections have consequences. Nobody asked her, I'm with Roger. It's the state attorney's decision. We'll just have to agree to disagree on that one, I guess. Well, everybody, we're going to wrap the show up. I want to thank my guest today, Derek John, who is the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Orange County. My friend Roger Scott, who is an attorney, a self-proclaimed liberal. We have had our fair share of conversations, but in the end, we're always respectful, and I appreciate you being here again today.
You can be friends and disagree.
You can. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
folks.
very much.
We will be coming to you with many shows. Listen, let's kumbaya. Let's do a group hug. No, we'll be coming to you with many shows as we can possibly put together. Brought to you by Bayshore Interactive. Bayshore Ariel is one of the other folks that are involved in this, and of course, Studio Bayshore and Tommy Bayshore for all the wonderful, all this new stuff. Isn't this so cool? He put this together today.
I love it.
He's doing a great job. We always want to try to bring everything back to local politics if we can, and also be able to deal with human interest stories as well. So thank you everybody for tuning in. This video will remain live. Please make sure you share it, and we'll see you again on the porch.